Hey guys, welcome back to Clueless Gamers. I'm Pete, joined in a second by my co-host Brian. If you've never been by before, this is a little podcast here called First and 10. It's an NFL football podcast here on the channel, and I was just talking about it right before we went live here. I can't believe we're in season 4 of the shows, the 4th year Brian and I have been doing this. It's always funny to think about too, like we started this whole thing during the COVID season, and now we're so far removed in that in some ways and other ways not, that it just feels like that was a different lifetime when all that was going on in the NFL and the sports world. It's truly one of those moments we're going to be able to look back at decades from now and tell our kids or something like that of like you don't know what it was like in terms of life, but it's specifically talking sports as we do on this channel and the NFL. I'm very excited to be back, Bri. It's been a long summer. We had draft and free agency and holdouts still going on and off the field things and all the typical things that come with an NFL season. But you know what? It doesn't matter because tomorrow the season starts on Thursday. We're on Sunday. We're not without NFL football until the middle of February. From then till the middle of February, I cannot wait. With all that said, I'll welcome in my co-host Brian. Brian, how are you? How has been your summer? What have you been up to, man? Are you glad to be back?
Of course. I mean, this is always a real treat for us to be on here to talk to the viewers about what we love, which is NFL football, and it's always a great time when it starts. I mean,
Yes.
doesn't feel like fall weather by any stretch right now. It's like 90 something degrees
Yes, it
here in
is in New
the
Jersey
east.
here.
Yeah, so hopefully we get some more fall-like weather pretty soon, but tomorrow is the day, the season opener, and that's always brings a lot of excitement.
Yeah, I can't wait. The Lions open up in Kansas City. They'll drop the banner. They'll do all that stuff. We'll get to all our game picks and the opening game we'll talk about as we go on. But overall, you say you had a productive summer. You've been busy, keeping busy.
Yeah, well, we were talking before we came on. I've been doing some different things with Sirius, working on some live shows, so that's
Yes,
been a lot of fun. But I wanted to ask you too, because I
of
thought
course.
one kind of good thing this off season to get you in the football mood was to watch the quarterback special on
Yes,
Netflix, and
absolutely.
I, for one, really enjoyed it. Did you get a chance to watch it?
I did. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I thought the cinematography, the editing of it was all great. The interesting thing is, I saw a report again today. This is like the third time I've seen it. They plan to do a season 2, right? They greenlit that and everything, but they're having trouble getting quarterbacks to sign up to actually be a part of the show. I guess it's a whole. They think it maybe they'll think it's a distraction or something like that. So I'm fascinated to see now we're about to kick off the season. I mean, who's really doing the show? I mean, what's going on? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would like there to be another season. I really
Me
enjoyed
too.
season one. I think probably some quarterbacks are turned away from the idea of having all the attention in the press in their house with their family
It's a
life all
lot.
the
I get
time.
it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Peyton Manning, I guess it was the executive producer,
Yeah.
certainly put together a great show, I thought.
Yeah, he just asked Daniel Jones. I saw a report, and Jones also turned it down. He's like the fourth quarterback now, I think, that's turned them down. So it seems like the way I think that the show could go is like you have like a top tier guy, a middle tier guy, and then kind of like an up and comer or someone who's bounced around. And I
Right.
think what they did with Mariota and then Cousins and Mahomes, of course, it worked out perfectly. I mean, it worked out perfectly for them because you ended up being with the Super Bowl, eventual Super Bowl champions. So I think that was great. You got to see one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history with the Vikings. I mean, they caught a lot of great moments that, of course, they could have never planned. And I really hope they get a season 2 rolling, and hopefully we just don't know that other quarterbacks have kind of signed up for it, and may we'll get something just as special. But yeah, that's great to bring that up because I thought it was great. I've also I'm not caught up yet because the final episode was last night. I didn't watch it, but have you been watching Hard Knocks as a Jets fan? Have you been tuning into that?
You know, you would think so, right? As being a Jet fan, but HBO has never really been my thing.
Yeah, a lot of people say
I
that.
have never never watched the show. I know that it's gotten a lot of attention. I don't know how it compares to the Rex Ryan year when they were on. It seemed like that year
Yeah,
they really
that
stole the
was
show with a lot
fun.
of big
Yeah,
personalities. But obviously, Rogers has been a huge topic of conversation. It just seems like a transformed
he
person.
seems totally
So,
different. Yeah.
and we'll see how it translates on the field. But obviously, this is the year we go into a Jet season with
Hope.
excitement, which we have not in the past doing this show.
Yeah, we'll talk definitely more about that and the excitement around the Jets. But overall, I've really actually liked HBO Hard Knocks. Quarterback I definitely preferred more, but I like what they did with it. Of course, the Jets were forced into that situation. Every team turned it down, and the NFL kind of, I think for the first time ever, or maybe the second time ever, introduced their clause that they have in the union contract of like, we're forcing the show on you. This is who we're picking. You're doing the show. And I think the way that they handled it, given that they didn't want the cameras in the building, was really good. I think it showed a good light on head coach Robert Saleh, and Rodgers had some good moments. I think everybody did. Wilson, Sauce, all the typical names and more. And I want to watch last night's episode, the final episode, to see how that wrapped up. But yeah, been good content this off season. Of course, you've been busy with your personal life. I've been busy, and now we're actually back to kick this off. And we're going to kick this off as we always do for the fourth season, Bri. We're putting our feet to the fire. Okay, we're nailing the boards in here. We're cementing our predictions for the season. Whatever adjective analogy you want to give, we're doing that here. We're picking all our divisions. We're picking our playoff seeding. We're picking our playoff games, and eventually we're picking the Super Bowl matchup and eventual champion. This is our opinions, of course, but we're staking to these predictions. Now, last year, things worked out somewhat all right. We both had the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and we both had that as a resounding victory. So that worked out. Teams like myself, person like myself, picked them playing the Bucks again. That was a huge mistake on that part. That was not good. So we were 50% there. We were somewhat there. But now it's a new season, and just like every of the 32 teams in the NFL, we have new hope to get this completely right. So, Brian?
I remember just before we get started, last year I had the Raiders making the
You
playoffs.
did.
That
You
did not
did.
work out.
And I'm glad you called
Yeah.
yourself out on that. Listen, we all get them wrong. I believe I had the Cardinals as one of the top teams going in the NFC. So we all have hit and misses. We all make
Yeah.
mistakes. It happens. You can't see sometimes teams crumbling or of course injuries. You can't predict everything. But hey, we're here and we're gonna put ourselves out there for another straight year. Brian, we're gonna kick off in your division, the AFC
All right.
East. Okay, we're gonna kick off there. We're going to go worst to first. So we'll start with our fourth worst team and work our way up. So I'll start and then you can go if you would like. So for me, I think it's pretty simple. I know there's a little bit of hype going around lately. I think the Patriots are the bottom team in this division. I'm not disrespecting Bill Belichick. I'm actually not one of these people that believes he's on the hot seat. I think Bill, when he wants to go, he'll go. I don't think he's going to end up ultimately getting fired there. Maybe it's like a kind of a backdoor thing where they move him to an advisory role or something like that. But I think there's enough pieces on this team and his physicality and the way he coaches defense that they're going to win probably 7 games, right? Like they're not going to be bad, but
Yeah.
I'm more interested in now with a real offensive coordinator back in there and Bill O'Brien, whatever hoopla mess was going on there of putting defensive coordinators as offensive coordinators last year. I want to see Mac Jones come back to his rookie year and progress because he definitely had a sophomore slump. It wasn't entirely his fault. I want to see him progress as a player, and that will give me more hope for next year. But for this year, I just think, you have the weird reports, that were refuted by Juju Smith-Schuster, but Albert Breer was saying his knee could blow up at any time, but he's saying his knee's completely healthy, and he's your only main offensive weapon. I think they're definitely going to finish in fourth. There's just not enough talent, especially in the offensive side of the ball. Brian, I'm going to shock you here in your third spot, and you're not going to like it. I'm going to put the
Oh
Jets
boy.
here. I'm not buying into the hype of the New York Jets. Do I think they will be better? Absolutely. I think they could win 9 games. But for me, I just don't see them being a top tier team in the division. Maybe next year they can make that, but usually in your first year, it's a huge transition. I know we all fall in love with, oh, well, Brady went to the Bucks, they won a Super Bowl. Stafford went to the Rams, they won a Super Bowl. It's like it doesn't work like that. Those are the outliers, and those teams were kind of ready-made. The Bucks had all these amazing Pro Bowlers. The Rams had already been to a Super Bowl. That's not the case with the Jets, who have the longest playoff drought of any of the four major American sports. I think there's a lot to do here. And for Rodgers to come in, he's said all the right things. He's done all the right things. I like a lot of the offensive pieces, but, does Breece Hall come back fully healthy? Does this defense replicate what they did last year? Do they really have that many weapons outside of Garrett Wilson? Is the offensive line going to hold up? I think there's too many questions there on top of a brutal schedule, especially your first 6 weeks are absolutely brutal. So I have you guys in third. I'm picking the Dolphins for second place, and of course that depends on Tua's health. I think that goes without saying. They'll get Jalen Ramsey back in about a month or so, but when we've seen Tua healthy, Mike McDaniels and him, this offense is extremely explosive. They were 8-3 before he got hurt. I think they've made some upgrades on the defense. They brought in Vic Fangio, and I really like this team now. It's depending on health, of course, but I really do like this team to make some noise in the AFC. And then finally, the Bills. And the Bills I'm not putting as the normal Bills, where they've won 13 games. I think they're coming back. I think this division is going to be very tight this year. I could see the Bills around about 11 wins. They've had some noisy of an offseason. I don't really like what's going on with Diggs and Allen and McDermott, and he canceled practice. He's saying he's very concerned about Diggs, and then the next day, he's saying he doesn't know why the media is making a hype over this, even though he said it. There's been a lot of weird things there. Von Miller not kicking off the season. He's still recovering from his knee injury. I'm still not a huge fan of their offensive line. I think this team's going to pull back a little bit. They're still going to end up in first place. They're still going to be a very good team, but they're not going to be this top-end team that we've seen over the last couple of years. It's going to be a lot of bumps in the road there. Brian, what's your AFC East looking like?
Yeah, I mean, we got it fairly similar. There's a flip-flop in the middle,
Let's
just as
pencil
I
short ends.
imagine you thought it would go. But we start in fourth place, or we're in agreement on New England. And I kind of agree with your take that this is not a team that you're just going to be able to run over. I mean,
No.
the Patriots are going to be very competitive. Not only a strong defense, probably one of the better defenses in the league, but a running game that's pretty good with Ramondre Stevenson,
Yeah,
and
I like
now,
them a
by the
lot.
way, Ezekiel
Yeah,
Elliott
what's left to
comes
see?
in. Yeah, right. Not exactly sure what they're going to get out of him, but they're going to be able to run the ball if Mac Jones can protect the football, like you said, as he did in his first year. I think they'll be in better shape offensively. Not a great team, not very good weapons, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were even 9-8. Honestly, I think you're going to get three
Okay.
winning teams out of this division, but I do think they will end up in fourth place. Third, I'm going to go with Miami.
Okay.
So the Dolphins, who I mean, I'm not going to spoil it yet, but I do. Well, yeah, I'll just save that for later. But the Dolphins, offensively, I don't think there's too much to question. Like you said, if Tua stays healthy, which is a major
It's a big
question. I
if.
mean,
It's a
not
big if.
yeah, it's a huge if because of what he's dealt with the concussions and
Mm-hmm.
everything. It has been a very difficult road for him. But if they keep him upright with those weapons, I mean, they there's few teams that have better weapons than they do with
Oh, for sure.
Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. They got a series of running backs that are effective in the backfield. So I like a lot about this team. I just think they're behind two teams that are a little bit better. And in second place, I got to go with the Jets. Now, look, this might be a pick with my head more than it is, or I should say with my heart more than
That's
my
fine.
head. But I just think, there's a lot of great mojo with this team right now. Obviously, the addition of Rodgers just changes everything, but I think it goes a lot deeper than that. This is a defense that is really getting a lot of hype going into the season. We've seen, you can take preseason for what it's worth, but this defensive line has really stood out
Yeah.
in preseason. And, I've heard, I think it was DJ Moore, or DJ Reed, excuse me, made a comment that
85 Bears, huh?
Yeah, 85 Bears, and it's like, okay, well,
So
let's not.
relax. It's coming
Yeah,
back.
I mean, let's hold off a little bit. But the bottom line is they've got great talent on this defense. It has a chance to be really good. The backfield, I think, is in a lot better shape now that you have Dalvin Cook as insurance. I think it allows Brees Hall to kind of get his feet wet for the first few weeks, and eventually he'll take over and hopefully be the beast that he was a year ago.
Yeah.
But I think the Jets very much are primed to be very good this year, and I have them in second. And I'm going the Bills. I'm not drinking too much of the Jet Kool-Aid that I'm putting them first in the division. I'm not one of these people who's talking Super Bowl. I have them second place. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. But the Bills, to me, are still the class of the division. I know there are still questions, but I just feel like Josh Allen is a guy who can take his game to a level that not many can. And so I know, there's other issues with personnel and guys on and off the field, but the Bills, to me, still too much talent. I think they'll get the Diggs situation under control. That, to me, is still the best quarterback wide receiver combination going. And I think the Bills will fine, and I think we'll have as good of a year as they've had the last
Okay.
couple. I think they still are at that level. So I ranted out with the Bills winning, Jets 2, Dolphins 3, Patriots 4.
I could totally see that happening too. For everything that I have talked shit about the Jets, I do hope that they actually have a good season for my friends, for the fan base. Like you guys need a little bit of hope in your life, and I'm excited that you guys are excited. Just think you need to temper some expectations there a little bit. But we just found out with Josh Allen in the last day or so that he was dealing with an elbow issue the last 8 or 9 games of last season. That was similar to kind of like a UCL kind of a little tear in there. So is that fully healed? Did he get surgery? What kind of thing? We don't know. It's very new information. But maybe that could also account and explain why he kind of slipped really in that second half of the season, particularly in the turnover department. Brian, let's go to the AFC South. I feel like this is a division we're not going to talk about that much. For me, I think it's very simple. We can go back and forth on the 4 and 3 spots, but for me, I have the Colts coming in fourth, Texans in third, Titans in second, the Jags in first. I think the Jags are far and away the best team in this division. Is their defense fantastic? No. But I think this offense is really going to be good this year. If you look at the Jags schedule, for the most part, it is pretty easy considering a lot of these top AFC teams. And I think the Titans, they have no idea what they're doing at the quarterback situation, but they're still a Mike Vrabel coach team. They're still going to be 7, 8 wins. They'll still be up there. And then the Colts and the Texans. Listen, you drafted a rookie QB, right? Whether 2 and 4 overall, there's going to be a lot of growing pains there. I talked in our last show. I really love what D'Amico Ryans can bring to the Texans, but there's a lot of growing pains there, and figuring it out. CJ Stroud has a lot to grow into. And then Richardson also is in that category. I actually like Richardson's upside more than CJ Stroud. But the whole Jonathan Taylor situation has been a mess. They really have no weapons. Pittman's a 2. He's really not a number 1 wide receiver. Their offensive line has not been the same in the last couple of years now. The defense has some pieces, but they're not really that great. So they're both going to be picking top 6 or 7 in the draft this coming year. They're not going to be good teams, but yeah, that's how mine go.
Yeah, so I actually have it a little bit different. And
Okay.
I know one of the teams that everybody is on. It seems like there's 2 teams that everybody is talking up going into this year. The Jags, in the NFC, the Lions. So I am a little nervous about these trendy teams because I feel like
It's fair.
when everybody is on like these trendy teams, it feels like it rarely works out. And we're not talking about like the elites like the Chiefs and the Bills. We're talking about teams that have no track record of winning.
No.
Let's be honest.
Throw the
So it's
Jets
like
in there if you want.
well, you could. But when you have a team now like Jacksonville where there's expectations, I wonder, how that impacts them. Because remember they went to an AFC title game when they played New England in the title game, and then it was like the next year, oh, they're just going to be as good, and the team fell apart, and
Yeah,
they
they were
traded
awful.
away
They were
everyone
all
on
over the
that
place.
defense.
Yep.
So I don't think this team's going to be terrible by any means, but I have them in second place. I'm going with Tennessee as the division winner just because I trust the pedigree. This is a team that feels like year in and year out, you know what you're going to get from them. The ground and pound style with Derrick Henry. They brought in DeAndre Hopkins. I think he still has something in the tank. I don't think this is a Julio Jones situation where it seemed like he was just done.
Near the
I
end of his
think
career, yeah.
Hopkins will actually help the offense. So I'm riding Tennessee and Mike Vrabel to win that division, followed by Jacksonville, and then I have an agreement with you. The Colts third. I give them the edge. Not really sure what to make of Anthony Richardson. I know you saw more of him being a Florida fan, so you can weigh in on that. But I give the Colts the edge. They're going to get Jonathan Taylor back. I know he starts on the PUP list, but when he comes back, he'll at least he's probably capable of winning them a couple of games, whereas the Texans, I think it's going to be a lot of growing pains. They're in it for the long haul. It seems like they have the right coach. We'll see how CJ Stroud progresses, but I think it's a long year in
So
Houston.
you think Taylor will come back? You think that, like, even though this contract situation, that he'll be forced to play, he'll come back?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be traded.
I mean, the issue is he kind of has to come back in some ways if he's not traded, because I think past week 8, if you do not report, then you lose that eligibility year of free agency. So then it becomes a whole nother thing. It's the same thing that Chris Jones is going through with the Chiefs. So that becomes a sticky situation. So we're swapped a little bit. So I had from top to bottom Jags, Titans, Texans, Colts. You had Titans, Jags, Colts, Texans. So we swapped a little bit of the pieces there, but yeah, that's going to be fascinating. I'm definitely way higher on the Jags than you are, and we'll see that going forward.
Yeah.
Let's go to the AFC North. I think this is going to be the best division in football. I know we talked about that last year with the AFC West, and we said,
Yes,
oh,
we
it's the
did.
greatest QB division ever, and it was a train wreck for the most part, especially for the Broncos and the Raiders. But in the AFC North, I believe this has been a division, a history of just strength and toughness and beating the crap out of each other. I think there's capable quarterbacks. I think there's capable defenses. And I really think this is going to be a fun race. So for me, from bottom to top, I still have the Browns in fourth. I think they're very top heavy, right? You got Amari Cooper. What is Deshaun Watson? Myles Garrett, we know his greatness. Nick Chubb. But outside of that, there's not too many all-star stellar pieces all over the place. They have a couple injuries. They're pretty screwed. They don't have a ton of depth. And, Watson, off the field stuff aside, on the field, just talking that, this was a guy that was a superstar. Okay, we were
Yeah.
talking about he was up there in the same draft class, obviously, as Mahomes. We were like, this guy, he's up there. He is great. And you know what? He misses about a year and a half of football. He comes back at the end of last year. He didn't look that great, even though he did play better in his final 2 games. What are we getting with him? I don't know. There's a lot of questions there having the biggest contract and guaranteed contract of any QB in NFL history, of any really player in NFL history. So that's going to be interesting. I do believe Kevin Stefanski is a good coach. I want to see how the Browns play out there. I still think they're going to be in fourth. I have the Ravens in third place. I think the Ravens have been a team that, until they can prove to me that they can stay healthy, I cannot trust them. Every year, I think even last year, I had them 2 or 1, and the year before, I had the same thing. Like, I always consistently put them in there. We know John Harbaugh teams, they compete. Look what they did in the wild card game last year. They have no
Yep.
Lamar, and they almost beat the Bengals. They're a well-coached team. They're a good team, but this defense is not what it was, at least on paper, and what we see in the preseason. It is not what it was from previous years. And now you have an offensive coordinator shift there, and I think Todd Monken comes in. They're talking about wanting to throw the ball more and get away from the run game, even though that's kind of what Lamar does and makes him a threat, at least to do both with the RPOs. Do I believe Odell can be anything more than a decoy? How good is Zay Flowers going to be? Can Rashad Bateman stay healthy? I think there's a ton of questions with the Ravens. So until they can prove it to me, they're going in third. Now, we could talk week 11, and they're top of the division because they've been number 1 in the AFC at one point in the top of the conference the last 2 years before Lamar got hurt. So I'm not counting them out. I'm just saying at the moment, I'm not trusting it. And then I have the Steelers in second place here. I'm a big believer on the Steelers. I love this defense. When TJ Watt is obviously on the field as opposed to off the field, they are a significantly different team. This team stays healthy for the most part. If TJ cannot get banged up like he did last year, Kenny Pickett made massive improvements over the back end of last season. He's looked great in the preseason. I loved he said all the right things. He said he went back and he looked at every single incompletion he had last year and described to himself and wrote down what he did wrong, why it was an incompletion. I really like the progression to him, man. He's not going to be this top level Mahomes, Allen, Herbert gunslinger. But I think for what they need in that offense with Najee Harris, and you got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens I've loved, like Freiermuth at tight end, I really love the Steelers, man. I'm putting them at number 2. And then I'm putting the Bengals at number 1. Joe Burrow, he hasn't had a preseason since his NFL career started, which is crazy to think about. He says he's good to go for week 1. I think this team is just, for at least this year, before the contract situation for everybody becomes a big thing, there's talent galore everywhere. They've improved a little bit in the offensive line. That's still a question there. But when you have Higgins and Chase and Mixon and Boyd, you're gonna be all right. And you got Joe Cool over there. You got Joe Shiesty. Still picking them as the class of the AFC North. That's how his mind's breaking down. How is yours?
Yeah, I think this is the first of the 3 divisions that we're in lockstep on. And, it's funny,
Hey.
Originally I had the Ravens in second, the Steelers in third, and I made a last second switcheroo. Even before I heard your take, it was my own thinking. So it wasn't like I heard you and you sold me. But we are in agreement. I start in fourth. The Browns, who by no means are a bad team.
No.
I mean, there's a couple divisions that you look at here, like we put the Patriots in last, you put the Browns in last. These are teams that could be in the mix for a wild card spot.
Yeah,
I don't think
if everything goes right for them, sure, I could see it.
Yeah, I mean, with the running game that the Browns have, like you said, Watson, we don't approve of all that went on off the field, but this is a guy who was a top-end quarterback in Houston. If he finds that form again, he's got good enough weapons around him. The Browns can be a dangerous team. I don't think there's any question. And I agree with everything you said on the Ravens, and I've heard a lot of hype about this team, that it's almost like, oh, they got the Lamar situation settled, he got his money, and now everything's fine. I don't see it that way, because you look at this offense, and I don't see a whole lot to write home about, with the receivers and running backs. I mean, J.K. Dobbins is no sure bet to stay healthy. I'm with you on Odell Beckham. Like, the last time we saw him was in that Super Bowl for your Rams, where he looked like he was going to have the game of his life and then exited in, the second quarter.
Yep.
And we haven't seen him on a football field since. So they paid him a lot of money. I don't know how big of a threat he is. I love the talent of Lamar Jackson, but I just think around him, it comes up a little bit short, and I just feel like when you watch the Ravens now, the picture I always have in my head is the cut to John Harbaugh on the sideline, and he just looks exasperated, right? How many times do we see that exact shot?
I know. It's literally happened multiple times now.
And I just feel like that's where it's gone for the Ravens, where they're kind of on the way down, and the Steelers are on the way up. And Kenny Pickett is the new exciting thing now. And I agree with your take on him. Like, he's not going to be a superstar, but if he can be like a Phillip Rivers type, that would be really good. And I think exactly what the Steelers sign up for. I like the weapons around him. You mentioned Freiermuth. To me, he's the new Heath Miller.
He's an up-and-comer. I like that comparison. That's a good one.
Yeah, and Najee Harris had some ups and downs, but I think we still feel like he can be a bell cow running back. They got a nice backup in Jaylen Warren behind him, so I think they're going to be able to score points in that defense. When you think about the Steelers, you think about defense. When they have a top-level defense, that's when they're at their best. There's certain teams that just have those certain identities, and that's what it is for Pittsburgh. The steel curtain is what you think about, and they have that kind of defense, so they're going to be in every game, and I think they're going to be right in the mix all season long. Absolutely. And then, of course, you top it off with Cincinnati. Not really a whole lot more to add. We love Joe Burrow. We love the weapons around him. I mean, Chase had some injuries last year. He goes into this season healthy. T. Higgins is about as good a number two as you could have. And don't underestimate Tyler Boyd's
That's what I've been
importance to the
saying, man.
offense.
People are selling the stock on this man.
He does not get enough credit. I mean, when one of the big guns is out, he steps in and he's productive. And even when both of them are healthy, he still makes plays. Burrow looks for him on third down, so he's a big part of that offense. And look, as long as Joe Burrow is there and upright, and it sounds like he's good to go for Week 1, the Bengals, are going to be where you expect them to be, which is the top spot.
There we go, Brian. We're lock and step on that one. Let's see how many more times that could happen as we round out the AFC conference, which is by and far, I don't have to keep saying, it's the first time I'm going to mention it, by and far the best conference over the NFC. We'll talk about the NFC in a sec. So let's finish it off here with the AFC West, Brian. For me, I think this one's another pretty simple one, to be honest, like the AFC South. For me, from bottom to top, it's Raiders, Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs. And, the Chiefs I'm not going to even talk about. Dynasty in the making, maybe a dynasty already. Super Bowl champs. We could talk more about what's going on with them currently when we do picks, but they're the class of the division. The Raiders are going to be bad. Okay, there's a lot of things going on here. I don't know if Josh McDaniels is honestly cut out to be a head coach. Would not be surprised if he gets fired mid-season. You have the weird stuff that came out in the last day or so. I don't know if you saw this, where Chandler Jones was writing about that they locked him out of the building and they don't want him there, and they contacted, an old girlfriend, the mother of his child, and stuff like that, and all this weird stuff. Then he deleted it. I mean, what is going on there? Devontae Adams has been grumbling in the offseason. Can Garoppolo even make it through half the season? This backup they had, what is it, the O'Connell kid or whatever it is? He's looked pretty good in the preseason. Could he be somewhat of an interesting player? But it's pretty much Max Crosby, and that's about it, right? Like, if Devontae doesn't have a quarterback, how is he going to play well? They already shipped Waller out of the building. I like Hunter Renfrow. They got Jacobs. That was a whole messy situation. They got him back in the building. I really just don't like any of the vibes over there. I know that's an overused word, but I really don't. I don't know what the hell is going on there in that front office. And to be honest, this team and one other team that we'll talk about in the NFC get a new owner. It is time to move on from the Davis family. It's done. Mark Davis is a terrible owner. He's one of the poorest owners in the league. You're in Las Vegas. This is a waste of this team's resources. The Broncos, the big thing obviously with them is Sean Payton came in. Is he going to change the culture? I believe he is. Are they going to be a better team than they were last year? I believe they will be. Are they going to be good, though? No. They're not going to be a good team. First of all the questions obviously rely on Russell Wilson, right? And he's had some moments in the preseason. He's had some awful moments preseason. Now it's preseason. So we're not gonna put all our stock into that. But you know what? What I can put stock into? Injuries. And this team is already stacking up major injuries before the season even starts, particularly on the offensive side of the ball at the skill positions. I think they'll be better. There's no way they will be as awful as they were last year. But they're not going to be a playoff team. I know there's people that have them as like a fringe wild card. I think their top this year is 7 wins. Like, I really don't think they're going to do anything better than that. And then the Chargers, this is a huge, huge year for the Chargers, okay?
Great.
Herbert, you're at the moment, because supposedly the Joe Burrow contract is going to be announced in the next day or so. But at the moment of this recording, on Wednesday, September 6th in 2023, Herbert, you were the highest paid player in the entire National Football League, okay? You had one of the most disastrous losses in playoff history in terms of comebacks. You were the other side of that. While everyone gave Lawrence the praise, you also let that lead slip away, okay? Before that, you weren't making any noise in the playoffs because you weren't getting there. And this is a big year for Brandon Staley, and this is a big year for Herbert. Now, of course, they're not cutting ties with Herbert, but they definitely could cut ties with that head coach. And now you bring in a new offensive coordinator there. You have some improvements. I think if you cannot show progression, show that you should be a top-level, top-5 quarterback, there's going to be some moving pieces, and they're not going to be Herbert. You already seen them draft a wide receiver. What other moves can they make? I think there's a lot of pressure on the Chargers here going into the season. So that's how mine shake out. Raiders, Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs at the top.
Well, yeah, we're in agreement again. Now, remember,
Hey!
you fast forward a year ago at this time. Remember how much we were talking up
Oh,
this
I
division,
remember.
and I'm fully ready for the division to disappoint us again. I mean, I don't feel like we go in with it nearly as high of expectations, but
No, not like
these
last year.
teams. I mean, I think you nailed it on the Raiders. I work with like a Raiders super fan at
Mm,
Sirius, so I feel like just in my conversations with him, my knowledge of the Raiders has gone up exponentially
it's great.
because this guy is like has a photographic memory of like play by play from 10 years ago. It's insane.
I love that.
Oh, you would be fascinated by it, but he is not very high on this team, and rightfully so. I mean,
He's a
there's not
realistic
a whole
Raiders
lot to
fan.
like here. I mean, you know, one of the things that you could rely on the Raiders year in and year out was Derek Carr. Well, he's not there anymore.
Yep.
Now it's Jimmy Garoppolo, who you don't even know if he's healthy, as you said. So
He
yeah,
barely
I mean,
passed a physical this summer. They almost voided his contract.
yeah, it's not a pretty situation across the board. Like you said, Devontae Adams already not happy. They're going to finish in last. That defense last year was probably the worst defense I've ever laid eyes on.
Yeah,
I
they,
mean, it
them.
was
It
that
was
bad.
them and the Vikings right in there as awful.
So then we go to third place. I have the Denver Broncos. I'm in agreement with you here that, like, yeah, I think they're going to be better with Sean Payton taking over, but it's too big of a leap
I agree.
for him to take over and turn them from what they were last year into a playoff team. Like, I just think
Yeah,
it's
lock
too
in year
much.
one.
I mean, you would have to see Russell Wilson turn the clock back like 5 years, and
Absolutely.
I just think at this point he looks like a player who is in decline. Who, I mean, I would have to believe will play better than he did last year. He couldn't play worse.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like he doesn't have the same mobility that he once did,
The same
and you take
confidence,
that
the same
part
like juice, really to
right,
it.
and
Yeah.
and you take that ability away for him to run around the pocket, and that's where he was at his best. You just hold him in the pocket, make him a drop back passer. He's not going to be very effective, and that's what we saw a year ago. And
Yep.
like we said, maybe he'll be better, but not good enough. So the Broncos still to me are third. Chargers, I agree with you. It's a huge year for them. It just feels like if not now, when? I mean,
Thank
this is
you.
the year that they've got to start having some results. I mean, we've gotten enough of a sampling of Justin Herbert to know he's obviously talented. He doesn't have to prove that.
Of
He
course.
does have to prove that he can win, you know, the late and close games, and that seems to be something that struggles with. And just the Chargers have to get rid of the stigma of finding ways to lose. You know, it's
It's
just
becoming
been that way for
comical.
so long.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it with like the last five head coaches that they've had. So it's not like we change the coach and it changes. No, it stays the same. So I think this is going to be the year where they do play better. I like Kellen Moore coming over as the offensive coordinator. I think that will be the recipe to get the best out of Herbert. And look, it's always dangerous putting stock into the Chargers, as we know, but I
Yeah.
do expect better results from them this year, second place. And then we end, of course, with the Chiefs. We know right now Chiefs probably aren't at their best with Chris Jones' situation. Oh, by the way, Travis Kelsey, questionable for tomorrow night's game. It remains to be seen if he gives it a go or not. But obviously, through 17 games with Mahomes and company, the Chiefs are going to be just fine, although it might be a little bit of a slower start than they are accustomed to.
Yeah, I still believe in them and Andy Reid and the structure that they have there. They're the class of the AFC. They're the class of the league. And until someone dethrones them, that's where I'm putting them. It would be disrespectful not to. Brian, let's go over to the significantly weaker and, in my opinion, way more difficult conference to predict, the NFC. I struggled mightily in my picks here because with the AFC, I feel like I'm pretty confident. The NFC, I'm like, man, I could see like 10 different situations happen. Like this conference is probably the worst I've ever seen either conference be in my life. Like, and
Yeah.
until you prove it otherwise, it's bad, and it's really surrounded by a lot of bad or questionable quarterback play. Yeah, so let's jump into it. Let's jump over to the NFC East. We'll start there, of course. I think this division is going to be pretty tight, just like it was last year. Remember, everybody was with, even though there was separation because the Eagles had so many wins, the Commanders were still right up there. They still had 7 wins. Like, they weren't an awful, awful team. And I think they're going to be in a similar boat. I think the Commanders are going to be in fourth. I think around 7 or 8 wins. Honestly, would not shock me if you hear through week 13 that they might, they might be sniffing a wild card. I've liked what I've seen with Sam Howell. I like kind of what they've been talking about. There's a lot of offensive weapons here that I think get sold down the river because Washington has just been a circus for the last 20 so years. But with McLaurin and Dotson, I mean, there's reasons to believe they're going to be good. My big question is, can this defense that has all of these first round picks actually stay healthy and perform to the way they're supposed to be? That's a huge question. Remember, they didn't pick up Chase's option, on his contract, which seems crazy. So now he's playing as a free agent for next year. So will he have a big year, or will he completely bust? Who knows there. I think the Giants are going to be in third place. I think they're a solid team. I don't think they're going to have any crazy regression. I'm not selling my Giant stock, but I also don't think there's some upper echelon class of the NFL. They're improving. They're going to improve again. I'm really excited to see what with rookie wide receiver Jalen Hyatt does. I think he could be a good piece. Can Waller stay healthy? They got the Barkley situation figured out a little bit. They paid Jones this offseason. I thought a little too much, but I guess that's the going rate. And this defense will be pretty solid. So I like them for a solid third place. I'm picking the Cowboys second. This is where I went back and forth, Cowboys or Eagles. And I'll explain here because the Cowboys, I think, are going to be a good team. Their schedule is not that bad. Their defense is probably best in the league, at least on paper and from what we saw last season. I think Dak is a solid QB. You get CD being the number one guy again for another season. Can Michael Gallup return to form? Cooks is still there. You kind of get out from, I know he was a big locker room presence, but now with no Zeke there, you don't have to feel obligated to give him the carries and give him the ball. Yeah. I know Pollard's coming off a major injury, so there's some question marks there, but because to me he's not a bell cow running back. But if you mix in him and some backups there, I think they could still be a solid team. They figured out the Zach Martin situation. They brought him back into camp, paid him more money, moved around. I think they're going to be a good team. And then the Eagles, who I believe, very much like the Bills, are going to be a good team. They're going to come back a little bit to the pack a little bit. They're another 11 or so win team I see. They have a harder schedule this year. They lost both their coordinators in Gannon and Steichen. How's that going to go? We saw the last time Sirianni called plays, it wasn't great. So like him working with the new offensive staff, who's really calling them there? Is he going to completely hand over duties, or is he going to take it back really quickly? I think there's some interesting things to watch there, but you add Jalen Carter to an already ridiculous defense that seems to be only filled with Georgia Bulldogs. I think you're going to be all right. I don't think they're going to have some major Super Bowl slump, particularly because the NFC is so bad. So I don't think they're going to massively slip. So that's how mine's going from bottom to top. Commanders, Giants, Cowboys, Eagles.
Yeah, we don't have any disagreement here. I'm looking forward to when we get to the North, because I have a feeling the North we might have like all different picks. That's kind of what I'm expecting. But yeah, this is another division where like you go to the last place team in the Commanders, and again, not a bad team. It's kind of like a theme when you look around the NFL this year that there's not a lot of. I mean, yes, there's the Arizona Cardinals who are just brutal.
Yeah, we'll get to them.
Right. But outside of them, there's, like there used to go into years and you could pick like 3 or 4 teams that were just brutal. That's not really the case this year. Now, there's one other team in addition to Arizona that I think is brutal. We'll get to them in a little bit. Commanders are not that team. They're a solid team. I agree with you. Will be in the mix for a wild card spot. I like this team on offense. Interested to see what Sam Howell can do at quarterback. I mean, it really has been a revolving door at quarterback for this franchise over the last number of years. It would be nice for them to find someone to give them some stability, but you like the receivers. There, they've got, like you said, a lot of first round picks on defense. So I think it's not a bad team at all.
This
But
is a big year for Rivera too, because now you got new ownership there that just paid what, $6 billion or whatever for the team. He could be on his way out if this team really goes lopsided.
yeah, the NFC East is a division where you never feel completely confident in because
Yeah,
it's just so hit or miss from year to year, right? Where like you think you have it
sure.
figured out and it ends up really working out very differently. It feels like that division more than any other is like super unpredictable. So I don't necessarily feel great about the picks here, but I am going with the Giants third. I think they'll be solid again. I think the roster is a little better this year than last year. I do, but also the schedule is a lot more challenging. And,
Yes.
you go in now where you have expectations, whereas last year they kind of surprised people in the performance that they had. So that always makes things different. I mean, Darren Waller coming in, I think, will be huge for Daniel Jones. I think that offense will be better. I'd like to see Daniel Jones take that next step as a quarterback. But, how much better can he be from last year? It remains to be seen. So I still have the Giants behind the big two. Dallas, number two. It's kind of the same thing with the Cowboys, right? Every year we go in, the team is loaded on paper. They've got talent across the board. They just can't get it done when it matters the most. It's a team that gets through the regular season, usually good enough to make the playoffs. They've got to make a run, and it just
They
seems
have
like they
to.
never
This
do.
is if this is not the year, much like the Chargers, then when is?
Exactly. But I mean, I think the team will be good enough this year to certainly compete with Philadelphia. I mean, you have to like a lot of what they have across the board. I mean, offensively, I think I'm even higher on Tony Pollard as the lead running back than you. I think this guy has really made the most of his opportunity. He is an explosive running back, and now not having Zeke in the mix, I think he really becomes focal point of that offense. And they've got plenty of receivers. I mean, CD Lamb did kind of come on last year after a slow start, so I think the Cowboys, you know, I think highly of them. And then the Eagles in the top spot again. I know they did lose both of the coordinators, but you talk about a quarterback that made strides. I mean, Jalen Hurts, how much he improved as a
Ridiculous.
passer is unbelievable. I mean, we may not have seen a bigger improvement in a quarterback than what we've seen from
Probably
him.
him and Allen were the two I could think off the top of my head.
Yeah, and certainly the addition of AJ Brown was huge for them. Devontae Smith is the number two receiver, probably as good of a number two as there is
Sure.
out there. Goddard solid at tight end. I think DeAndre Swift was a nice sneaky add
I've been
there
saying that.
in the
Bet on
backfield.
DeAndre Swift.
Agree. He kind of fell out of favor in Detroit, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield. I think in
Hmm.
that scheme, he plays a big role. I like him there,
Agree.
and defensively, we know they're loaded. And for them, the offensive line sets the tone. I mean, it's as good as any in the league, probably the best, and that really is the straw that stirs the drink for the Eagles. So we're in agreement
That's
there.
it. Look at that. That's what, three in a row now in division. So let's see if the NFC South changes anybody's mind here. So for me, I think the bottom one we're going to agree with, but I won't spoil it for you. I think the Bucks are going to be awful. I think this team is going to be literally one of the worst teams in the league. I'm sorry, Baker. It's nothing personal. You're not really that great. Obviously, you're better than 99% of people in the world, but in terms of NFL, you're not really that great. I think your time
When,
is.
when I was saying that there
I
was
had a
one other
feeling.
team
I had a feeling.
besides Arizona, that was exactly the
Yeah,
team.
yeah,
You got it.
they're gonna be very bad. They're gonna be selling much of their very high commodity pieces come the trade deadline. I think Mike Evans is already. There's been rumors there and kind of pseudo mock drafts. Keep an eye on him definitely to be out the door mid-season. This team, a lot of talent there, but they're a little bit over the hill, right? They sold, rightfully so, for Tom Brady. They had great years, two great years, and one, you still had Brady, you still made the playoffs, but you won a ring. You brought some kind of respectability to a downtrodden franchise, but Kyle Trask is probably going to be starting this. in week 4, 5, maybe 6 is going to be a really, really bad team. I don't still like what they did with kind of shoving Bruce Arians upstairs and all the stuff there with Leftwich and I don't know. I really don't like a lot of the things that went on, and I don't expect them to be even remotely good. For me, the Panthers are number 3. All I will say on the Panthers, and I know our friend Sean Sharkey sometimes watches this podcast. So Sean, I know you're a big Panthers fan, but they're going to go through some growing pains. They're not going to be really a great team. It's been a popular pick for people to believe they're going to win the division. I think that's a little bit ludicrous. This defense is pretty good, but who knows what happens with Brian Burns, who's another person who hasn't reported to camp and is going through a contract situation there. And Bryce Young, I think he's good. I just have some questions, man. He's very small. I think that's been super evident when you even watch training camp. Like he looks like a child out there amongst men. And I think that's a big concern. And their offensive line is putrid. It's bad. It's really bad. And then they bring in some veteran skill pieces, but people like Adam Thielen, they're over the hill, man. They're done. It's over. And I just don't think they're going to be a very good team at all. The Saints, I have as number 2. That might be the big shocker for people. I like Derek Carr. I believe in Derek Carr, but I'm not a big believer in Dennis Allen. He's not proven that there's anything I should believe that he's a good head coach. That defense is good, but they're definitely on the wrong side of 30 there for the most part on a lot of key pieces. What can Carr do? You got Thomas, can he stay healthy? Kamara suspended to start the season. You're bringing in Jamal Williams, who was the touchdown leader last year, but can he be the straight up bell cow? I love Olave. So there's a hit and miss there with the Saints. I'm very back and forth on what I want to do with them, but number 1 is the Falcons. I'm buying the hype of this team. Do I think they're going to be some world beaters? No. Do I think the defense is good? Not really. But this offense, I think, is going to have some firepower. I believe in Arthur Smith. You got Bijan Robinson now in there. Drake London. I think Ritter has looked serviceable. Kyle Pitts at tight end. I think there's reason to believe. You still have Algier as your second running back, who ran for 1,000 yards last year. So I think there's a lot of nice offensive pieces there. They play in a dome, which helps out, obviously, as the winter gets colder. They don't play a very particularly difficult schedule or difficult division, as I just said. I'm riding with the Falcons to take the top of this division.
All right. Well, I'll go to my picks here. We start in the basement with the Tampa Bay Bucks. I referenced it before that I thought there was one other team that's kind of in the Arizona Cardinals class as just being awful, and that would be the Bucks, and we seem to be in agreement on that. I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough that Todd Bowles is just not a good coach.
I think he's a coordinator. I don't think he's a head coach.
And that's just the case with certain guys.
I feel the same way, like I said earlier, about McDaniels. I just don't think they are head coaches.
Right, and certain guys are just great coordinators. They're not fit to be head coaches. Yeah. And Todd Bowles, look, he had one nice year with the Jets where they won 10 games. They were one game away from making the playoffs. They stunk it up in Buffalo, and that was the end of that. Yep. And they never sniffed anything close to it after. And it just feels like Todd Bowles doesn't have command of the entire operation. And when the operation is led by Baker Mayfield, I don't have a lot of confidence.
Who is struggling down the stretch, as the report said, to beat out Kyle Trask in camp. That's not good.
Yeah. Yeah, and we know Baker had his moment in the sun for your Rams last year, that crazy game against
my voice because of that game.
Aforementioned Raiders, which, by the way, my Raider fan friends went play-by-play through how the Raiders botched that game.
Yeah, that was rough. If you're a Raiders fan, that was rough.
But yeah, so Bucks last. There's not really a whole lot to add there. I agree with you that I think the team is just going to be terrible. They were really not very good last year, despite the fact that they made the playoffs. It was kind of like, how did they even get there?
Yeah,
and then they got
8-9,
there.
Right? That's how they won the division.
They laid an egg against Dallas on their home field, and it was like, goodbye, Bucks. That's the end of Brady, and now the franchise is nowhere. So that's kind of the story there. Panthers, I am going to have number 3. I don't really have a whole lot to say about the Panthers, just because it's like, what are we gonna get out of Bryce Young remains to be seen. I will say that I felt like last year, after they traded Christian McCaffrey, that the team would just fold and be awful, and instead they were
They
actually
fought.
competitive.
Yeah, they did.
So I thought that was a good sign. I do like Frank Reich as a head coach. I
Me
don't
too.
think he's great, but I think he kind of
Me too.
stabilizes things. So I think maybe take a slight step forward, not be completely bottom feeders, but certainly nowhere close to playoff contention. I'm going to have Atlanta at number 2. I will give the edge to the Saints in this division. I'm not completely sold on the
That's
Falcons.
fair.
I know there's a lot of hype with Bijan Robinson, and he's going to be the next big thing in the backfield. And yes, there are some offensive pieces there. Kyle Pitts, though, has been very hit or miss. We have like huge expectations for him, and it was like he didn't score a touchdown until whatever it was, week 13 last year, something crazy
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I still don't know if he's like an elite player at the position. Desmond Ritter, I don't know what he is. Whereas with the Saints, I just have a better idea. Derek Carr, I know it's a new system, but we've watched him play for so long. We know what he's going to do, and it's certainly better than the Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, Andy Dalton triumvirate that they've run out there over the last few years. So the post Drew Brees
A little
era
stability.
in
Yeah.
Right. The post Drew Brees era in New Orleans has not had stability at the position. I think that's exactly what Carr brings. Olave, you mentioned to be his number one target. I think that works out well. Michael Thomas, be nice if they could get something out of him.
Yeah.
Kamara hopefully comes back at some point. But I am going to favor the Saints over Atlanta to win the
Yeah, I
division.
went back and forth on what I wanted to do there, but I ultimately ended up riding with the Falcons. Hey, we'll see how it breaks. Two more divisions, Brian. We'll get through them quick. The NFC North, I think we're going to have a little bit of disagreement here. So I'm very
I think
interested to
so
see how this is
too.
going to go. For
Yeah.
me, I think the bottom of the division is still going to be the Bears. Um, I like what they've done. I like DJ Moore. I like some of the pieces that they added, but overall, they can make progress and not be the worst team in the league and still be last in the division. I still think there's a long way to go there. Do I love Matt Eberflus as a coach? That remains to be seen. For me, I think the Vikings are taking a big step back here. I'm putting them in third.
Interesting.
This defense is putrid. I pulled up the stats here. You're looking at second to last in terms of yards that they gave up last year. I mean, they were atrocious. And it's not like it's gotten any better. I like Kirk Cousins. We talked about quarterback at the beginning of the show. I
Yeah.
think he's a solid player. I wouldn't be surprised if they snuck into a wild card. You have Jefferson. I really like the addition of Addison. I think he's going to be a nice wide receiver there on the complement on the other side. But overall, I still think it's weird that they got rid of Cook, and I just don't see a lot of juice here, even with someone like Hawkinson as well that helps out. I'm picking the Packers at 2. I'm a big believer that the Packers are still going to be a good team. I think this is the chance for Matt LaFleur to prove that it wasn't just all Rodgers, that he's actually a good coach. I've liked what I've seen out of Love so far. I think they have a great offensive line. We saw in the preseason, even when it was ones v ones, he didn't get touched a single time. There was no pressures. They got two running backs in Jones and Dillon there in the backfield. They got young tight ends. They got Dobbs and Watson. And they got a solid defense. I think they are being undersold a lot. Love, I don't think it's going to light the world on fire, but I think they're going to be a fringe wild card team. I think they're going to be a pretty decent team. And then for me, I am buying the hype as well, like the Jags. I am buying the Lions hype. I think they're like a 10-win team. I think they're going to be good. They have Hutchinson and then really not a lot of other fantastic pieces on defense, but this offense is explosive. I mean, they got a great offensive line. You bring in Gibbs at running back to add to that. You have Amon St. Brown. You have all of these weapons, and Goff, when he has protection, he plays well, man. So I have the Lions top in the NFC North. Do you agree?
No, and I referenced it before. I had a feeling when we got to this
Me too.
division that it was going to be all
It's where we
different.
diverge paths here.
Yeah, yeah. This is one where we have different teams in all four spots.
Wow.
So,
Okay. Who you
yeah.
got number 4?
So number 4, we start in the basement, and I have the Green Bay
Wow.
Packers.
How about that?
Now, again, it kind of continues the theme. I feel like I haven't gotten to a last place team. There's been a couple like the Bucks and the Texans.
Right.
A lot of the last place teams, like I don't think are that bad, but I just think this division we're going to see some progression from another team, which I'll get to in a little bit. That it kind of leaves the Packers
Okay.
in the last spot. I just don't know about Jordan Love. That's kind of the main thing here. I know they have ability on defense. I like the two running backs. Christian Watson did show a lot with Rodgers second half of last year, but it is a downgrade when you're now catching passes
For
from
sure.
Jordan Love. So I don't know that I'm feeling the love as much as you are, and so I've got the Packers in last. Number three, I referenced this earlier too, that the trendy teams, right, where you talked
No,
about
you're not.
the Jaguars and the Lions. I have Detroit number
Oh my
three.
God, that's crazy. How
Yep, I
about
have the
that?
Lions in third. I
Wow.
just feel like this is a situation where they are a team that's in for a big letdown, where it's like all
Okay.
the hype is there, everyone's buying, and it's just not gonna measure up. I just feel like that with the Lions. Jared Goff, look, we've seen his ups and downs. You know all about them from his days with the Rams. He is by no means a sure thing. Was he good last year at times? Yes. But the other thing about the Lions is like everyone's buying the hype when this team went on the nice stretch at the end of the season after, they were awful the first part of the season. Well, it would be nice if they were competitive in the
Right.
first part and then the second half got them enough to be a playoff team, but it's kind of easier once the pressure is off a little bit when you started so bad. So I just think look, I don't think they're going to be bad. I just think they're going to be disappointing and not the playoff team that everyone
Okay.
expects. Whereas I am higher on the Bears. I just feel like
Yeah,
this
you're
is a
buying the
team that is
Bears.
trying
All
to
right.
take a step forward. I know the record was awful last year, but we saw stretches where Justin Fields looked like he could be the real deal.
It
I
was a
mean, he
big year
was
for him.
running all over people, and I just really feel like he's going to take the next step. Love the addition of DJ Moore. When you get a young quarterback, that receiver that you can trust, like AJ Brown for Hurts, I'm not sure it'll be at the same level, but I do think it makes a big difference in that offense. I think he takes a big step forward. I think the Bears make a big leap this year, number two in the division. And I am going with the Minnesota Vikings. Number one, I
Wow.
still, yes, we know the defense is not good, but for me, the Vikings, it's about the offense and what they can do. And when they're at their best, this is an explosive unit. I mean, last year, we were talking about this team as one of the best in the league, and then they just completely folded. I mean, remember the game in Buffalo? They won that crazy
It was
game, and
amazing.
it was like, it took too much out of them because the next game they played Dallas on their home
Got
field and lost like
blasted
42 to
43.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, the Vikings are kind of questionable, but I still just like the talent on offense too much. I feel like there is still another level for Kirk Cousins. Maybe I liked watching him in quarterback. I felt like he kind of stole the show there. But I just think the combination with him and Justin Jefferson, I think Madison taking over as the lead back, I think he'll fill that role nicely. They will be a very good offense, particularly at home, and good enough to win that division.
Wow.
So very different here.
Very.
I
That
have the
is the
Vikings.
most different we've been so
Yeah.
far. Wow. I'm very excited to see how the NFC North works out now. I'm going to be tuning into those games especially. Brian, finally, for our division picks, the NFC West. It's home of this two-time champ. For me, I think it's very simple. For the fourth spot, the Cards are going to be awful. We've talked about that. I don't need to harp on it. I think this is as close to publicly tanking as you can be in the NFL. I mean, I think
Yeah.
they are clearly. I mean, they're considering starting a rookie. Now they're going to probably start Joshua Dobbs at QB. There's talk and reason for that they won't even have Kyler Murray start the entire year, so they don't have to worry about the injury guarantee that they'll have to pay him if he gets hurt again. They're going to be. They ship Isaiah Simmons out to the Giants. They're going to be an absolutely awful team. I think another team that I'm sorry is going to be bad is my Rams. They're the complete opposite, where you have a lot of hope with your Jets, and you should. There's a lot of delusional Ram fans out here that still think because the NFC is bad that we're going to have a wild card shot. We're a really bad football team. Like we are And listen, I'm someone who will root every game and lose his voice just like I did with the Raiders game last year because that's just who I am and they're in my blood. But I could also be realistic. And I actually rather them be so bad because we can get into these top picks because we actually have a first round pick for the first time since 2016 next year. There's supposedly a lot of great QBs coming out next year. Maybe we can even get in the Caleb sweepstakes, have him come home to LA. The Rams are going to be a really bad team. They're the youngest team in football from top to bottom. Who knows if Aaron Donald, what's going to happen there? Is he going to get traded midway through the season? You just saw that Kupp had just got ruled out for week 1, which we knew was coming. He went up to Minnesota to see a specialist for his hamstring. He might even go on, McVay kind of was a little bit dodging of the question. He might even go on injured reserve, which means he probably missed about 4 games. This is going to be a bad football team. Even if Matt Stafford stays healthy and plays better, this offensive line has looked atrocious in the preseason. They've looked downright awful. They cut their former third-round pick, Logan Bruss. An absolute bust of a pick. They're going to be a mess of a football team, like probably 4 or 5 wins. And to top that off, their schedule is brutal. I mean, it is a ridiculously hard schedule. Opens with the Seahawks, Niners, Bengals. They're done. This team is done. Like they are, I love them to death. They are dead in the water, this team. We'll have to see if McVay even sticks around or goes to the booth in the offseason. For me, here's the shocker.
Oh, boy.
I'm picking the Niners at 2. I really have not. I've really, I know they just signed Bosa as of about an hour and a half ago. I don't know if he's going to be ready to play week 1, maybe. I haven't liked a lot of the noise here, much like the Bills. I still think the whole Trey Lance situation was very weird. I don't like how that was handled. Is Brock Purdy really healthy coming off a massive, injury with your elbow and he had his UCL repaired? Is he even really that great? Yeah, he came in and he had a stretch. We've seen a lot of guys have stretches in this league and they come back the next season and they're not the same. Baker Mayfield. I just can't go automatically, oh, well, he's going to be great. Kyle Shanahan, revolving door of quarterbacks. And is he going to ultimately stay healthy? There's a reason why they kept Sam Darnold on this roster. And they're talking about, oh, he might have comparisons that he can end up being a Steve Young in his career. Ridiculous. So I think they're going to be a good football team because there's so many great players, but they are injury prone. And you have a QB situation. I mean, we're not even sure if Kittle's going to play week 1 now. That's up in the air as well. Already to start the season. We know Debo's injury history. I'm not all of a sudden putting them at 14 wins. And then I'm buying the Seahawks at number 1. I think it's a good football team. I think there's a lot of young, perennial, almost Pro Bowl pieces. I think Geno Smith, he's not going to be like some all-world beater, but I think he can be similar to last year. I think he could really be, when he supported a good QB. They just drafted Zach Charbonnet. You have Kenneth Walker there. You got 2 really young tackles on either side of you. You drafted JSN and Jackson Smith and Jigba, right, to add to Lockett there and Metcalf. Like, I think this is going to be, they might even have the best quarter in football on that team. I think they're going to be a really good football team, Seattle. I'm picking them number 1.
Well, yeah, we've got a disagreement at the top 2 spots.
Don't tell me you put the Rams in second place.
Let's just see how it goes. All right, so last is Arizona. The only thing I'm going to say about them is I was on one show with Sirius where the host was like talking about the Cardinals quarterback situation. He was like, at some point it might be like Jonathan Gannon's long lost cousin playing quarterback.
Yeah, it's weird. He's cursing, saying they're looking for effing killers or something. That's a weird situation.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, like you said, Dobbs was named the starter. There's not really much else to add there. All right, number 3, I'm going with the Los Angeles Rams. Okay. So no, I'm not doing anything drastic here. I have the Rams in 3rd. I don't really think there's too much I need to add. I think you pretty much handled it. I mean, Kupp's situation, you expect him to miss games here? You think he'll be good?
He's missing. He's been confirmed out for the Seattle game for this Sunday. And the way McVay dodged that question about if he's going to go on the IR, he's going on the IR. He's going to miss the first month of the season, in my mind, for sure.
Oh, boy. Well, then that's obviously huge. I mean, Cam Akers at least is like out of the doghouse now.
Had a couple good games to end the season last year.
Yeah, so we'll see what he can do over a full season. But I'm with you, Rams third. Seahawks, I have number two. I guess I'm just a lot more of a believer in the 49ers than you are. I actually have San Francisco as the number one overall seed in the NFC
Wow,
this
we'll
year.
get to that in a
Sorry.
second. Yo, okay.
Um, yeah, I'm going Seattle number two. I like the team. I just think they're bound for maybe a little bit of regression from last year where they kind of caught everybody by surprise. I mean, when you went into last year, you thought this was one of the absolute
I
bottom
did.
teams.
I did.
And now all of a sudden, are we putting them upper echelon? To me, it's a little bit of a reach. I trust the 49ers a lot more despite the noise. I just believe in the coaching staff led by Kyle Shanahan. Brock Purdy has shown a lot when healthy. I don't know, like you said, is he healthy? Who knows? But if not, I feel like you can plug Sam Darnold in and he would run the offense well too because of what you have around him with the likes of Debo and Brandon Ayuk
And
and
he's looked
Kittle,
good in
provided
camp.
he's
He's looked good in
healthy.
camp.
Christian McCaffrey, and defensively, they've got the Bosa situation under control, and they've got plenty of playmakers on defense. They can get after the
Yeah.
quarterback. That's one of the big hallmarks of their team. So I think they're going to be very, very formidable and number one in the division.
All right, Brian. Well, that's all our division picks. We're getting a little low on time, so let's run through this real quick here. So for me, for the
Okay.
playoffs, I think from 7-1, the way it's worked out, I have Saints making the playoffs as a wild card, Cowboys as the 6 seed, Niners as the 5 seed, top wild card, Falcons as 4, Lions 3. I got the Seahawks as the number 2 seed, and I got the Eagles repeating. Not as dominant as last year, but I got them repeating in a weak NFC. What say you?
I had sorry, this was before you didn't give your wild card picks, did you?
Yeah, I went 7-1. I went all the
Okay.
way up the NFC. So just start 7 all the way to 1.
Okay, so seven, I have the Seahawks.
Okay.
Giants are six, Cowboys five. So I've got three teams making the playoffs in the NFC East.
I see
And
that.
then my four seed is the Saints. I've got Minnesota three, Philadelphia two, and the 49ers one.
All right. And the 49ers at 1. Man, we have a wide discrepancy on how we see the NFC. That's going to be fun to watch. All right, Brian, let's jump over to the AFC. For me, the 7 seed here is the Dolphins. The 6 seed is the Steelers. The 5 seed, the top wild card, is the Chargers. I have the Bills as the 4th seed. The Bengals, the Chiefs, and the number 1 team in the AFC, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Whoa!
Yeah, I knew that one would shock you. I knew it would. I think they'll be the
my!
number 1 seed. Their schedule is very easy. I think all the things going on with the Chiefs right now, they'll still be excellent. But I'm taking the Jags as the number 1 seed.
I don't know that I have ever been more surprised by something that you've said
I
on
had a
this
feeling
show.
you would be surprised with that one.
I mean, you did already surprise me once before we came on telling me you were in grad school, but I think this one was even a bigger surprise.
There we go. What's your
I
AFC
admit.
breaking down like?
All right, so let's get to the AFC. Number seven seed, we're in agreement. I have the Dolphins. I have the Jets. Number six making the playoffs. The
Okay.
top wild card position goes to the Chargers.
Okay.
And then the division winners, I have the Tennessee Titans, number four. I've got Cincinnati, number three. The Chiefs, number two. I don't necessarily feel great about it, but for some reason, I'm inclined to go with the Bills, number one.
All right, you're buying the Bills hype. I'm sure Dylan will love that. How about that?
Yeah.
All right, so that will be fun to see. Now let's go into our playoff predictions and breakdown. You ready? So we're going to start in the wild card. NFC, 7 seed obviously for me is the Saints going against the 2 seed Seahawks. I see the Seahawks winning that one. I got the 6 seed Cowboys going against the 3 seeded Lions. I see the Cowboys winning that game. And then the Niners, the 5 seed going against the 4 seeded Falcons. I have the 49ers taking that. Seahawks, Cowboys, Niners advance to meet the Eagles who are on the bye. Those are your 4 teams in the NFC. How about you?
Okay, so I would have the 49ers getting the bye. The Eagles, number two, would host Seattle. That would be correct based on my
Yeah, so you would
picks.
you would have Seahawks v Eagles.
Eagles. Okay, and I would take Philadelphia.
Okay.
And I would have the Vikings playing host to the Giants in a
No, well,
rematch
no,
of
yeah, you would Vikings, Giants, Vikings. So what would
so
you?
a rematch of last year, and this time I'm going to go in favor of Minnesota.
Okay, how about that? All right, and then you would have
Saints,
Cowboys
yeah, Cowboys at Saints,
at
correct?
Saints. Yes, you would.
Yeah, and I'm going to take Dallas.
Okay. All right. So you have the Eagles, Vikings, Cowboys, and then on the bye was the Niners. I had Seahawks, Cowboys, Niners. The Eagles were on the bye. The AFC wild card. I have the 7-seeded Dolphins visiting the 2-seeded Chiefs. Think the Chiefs are going to win that one. The 6-seeded Steelers against the 3-seeded Bengals. Think the Bengals win that one. And the 5-seeded Chargers versus the 4-seeded Bills. Do the Chargers get over the hump? No, the Bills are going to win that game. So I have the Chiefs, Bengals, Bills advancing, and the top-seeded Jags on the bye as your 4 teams in the AFC.
Okay, and I would have Dolphins at Chiefs, where we go Kansas City. Jets making the playoffs, what a sight that will be, but they
Yeah.
take on Joe Burrow and the Bengals, unfortunately, and I cannot give the edge to the Jets. I'm going Cincinnati, so the Jets'
Okay.
playoff stay is one and
Being
done.
fair.
And the Chargers take on the Titans. Interesting game, and I
Very.
said before that I'm higher on the Chargers. I think we're going to see better results from them. Chargers to win a playoff game, knock out
All
Tennessee.
right, so you got Chiefs, Bengals, Chargers advancing, and your top-seeded Bills on the bye. Let's go over to the divisional round, Bry. NFC, I would have the Cowboys at the 6 seed going against the Eagles, a nice division matchup. I think the Eagles are going to get the edge here. And another division matchup, the 5-seeded 49ers against the 2-seeded Seahawks. The Seahawks are going to lose this game. The Niners are going to win. It's going to be a rematch of the NFC. It's going to be Eagles, Niners in the NFC. I think the Niners get stronger as the season goes on. That's how I have that breaking down. How about you?
All right, so let's see here. The I had the 49ers, so they would play the lowest remaining seed.
Yeah, so in your advancement, your lowest remaining seed would be the Cowboys. So your
Okay.
5-seeded Cowboys would visit the Niners.
Another rematch from last year and a heck of a matchup, but I got to go San Francisco. I feel like this is
Those poor
typical.
Cowboys.
Yeah, yeah. I just, until they get over the hump, you can't feel confident about it. So, yeah, I'm going
And
49ers.
then you would have Vikings visiting Philadelphia.
Vikings visiting Philadelphia. Have to go with the Eagles.
All right, so we both have the same matchup in the NFC. How about the
Which is the
AFC?
same as last year.
Same exactly as last year. I think they're the two overwhelming good teams. Maybe the Seahawks surprise, maybe another team. For me in the
Yeah.
AFC, I would have the 4-seeded Bills be visiting the 1-seeded Jags, and I think the Bills win. And then the
Okay.
Bengals go against the 3-seeded Bengals going against the 2-seeded Chiefs. Another rematch there. This time in the divisional round, I think the Chiefs get them again. I think they'll win. So it will be a Bills Chiefs rematch in the AFC, much like I believe it was in 2020. I believe that matchup was. Bry, you in your matchups here breaking down, you had your lowest remaining seed was the Chargers. So the Chargers would go see the Bills. How do you see that going?
Buffalo.
All right, so Chargers v. Bills. You got Bills. And then your other seeds would be the Bengals and the Chiefs, just like I had it.
Yeah. Boy, this is.
It's tough.
Yeah, I'm going Bengals.
In Arrowhead again. You think they're
Yeah,
going to
they've
win?
won. They've
Wow.
won there before. We know last year it went the way of Kansas City. There was some shaky officiating down the stretch there. Chiefs, I feel obviously are good, but there are some questions there to start this season. I feel like Cincinnati is primed to take it this year.
All right, Brian. So that goes over until our NFC and AFC championships. Okay, so the way things have broken down, we have both had this almost similar picks, right? So in the NFC here, as I write this down, I have Niners v. Eagles, just like you do, and I'm picking the Eagles to go back to the Super Bowl. I know it's not a popular pick, but yes, I think the loss of coordinators is still a thing, but I think the NFC is so weak, it's really hard for me to pick more than one or two teams there. And then for me in the AFC, I would have Bills versus Chiefs. I'm taking the Chiefs. So I'm getting the rare Super Bowl rematch is what I'm seeing break off. Brian,
Oh,
you're going to the NFC. You have Eagles Niners as well. Who's winning that?
the Niners.
Okay. And
So
then
we actually have different picks here for both. I'm going Bengals
okay,
knock off the
so
Bills.
your Super Bowl rematch will be Bengals versus 49ers. And
Yep.
mine is Chiefs Eagles. For me, I see the opposite going. I believe the Eagles get the edge this time. I have them as my eventual Super Bowl champions, even though I don't feel fantastic about it. Bengals Niners. Who's your Super Bowl champ?
Super Bowl champ this year is, drum roll please, the San Francisco
All
49ers.
right, now kill
I
my
feel
soul.
like they have been knocking on the door now for a couple years, but I just everything that's in place there that John Lynch is as the GM, to Kyle Shanahan, the coach. I think they have a team where the quarterback isn't that they're not as reliant on the quarterback as a lot of teams. I just feel like this is the year that they break through.
How about that, ladies and gentlemen? That's our picks. Love them, hate them. Let us know down below. That was a lot of fun, Bri. Before we get out of here, because we are extremely low on time, let's do a lightning round of what our picks are going to be for the week one of the opening season. We start.
The Tennessee Titans are road warriors to start.
As I hit that, as Thursday night football, we will start with the Lions visiting the Chiefs. The Chiefs dropped the banner, of course. I think the Chiefs, despite Kelsey maybe being out, the Chris Jones situation, I believe they get the win. Do you?
I agree. I mean, you know my thoughts on the Lions. I think their letdown starts week one. I'm riding Kansas City.
All right. For the Sunday games, we kick off with the Panthers Falcons. I think the Falcons start off their division winning season week one. They're going to win this game.
I'm gonna go Falcons. I think this game will be close. Divisional matchups often unpredictable. By the way, week one is usually unpredictable,
True.
so I think this game goes down to the wire, but I'll take Atlanta.
Texans Ravens. I got the Ravens winning week one.
Yeah, not much to say here. The only question is, do the Ravens win by double figures?
Yeah, remember that back in the day, that Ravens Dolphins game, how much they won by? Never know. Bengals Browns. I'm going upset pick here. I'm taking the Browns. The Browns. The last time that the Bengals have won in Cleveland, I looked it up, was literally October 1st, 2017. Was the last time that the Bengals have won in Cleveland. It seems to be just even in the Joe Burrow era, they just cannot win in that stadium. I'm taking the Browns in the week one upset.
Interesting nugget there, but Burrow is healthy, or at least healthy enough to give it a go. I think I'm picking Cincinnati to come out of the AFC. I think it starts with a road win in a tough environment, as it always is. That dog pound.
The Jags v. the Colts. I'm going back-to-back shocking upset picks. I'm taking the Colts. The Jags, Pete, they're your number one seed. Another team that has struggled in the opposing division opponent stadium. They have struggled to win games in Lucas Oil. I think it's, you have a situation there. You don't know what to expect with Steichen and Richardson and what's going to be thrown at you. The Colts will be bad, but they won't know it in week one. I think they knock off the Jags week one.
I'll tell you, that is fascinating to me that this is your number one seed, and you've got
Go on
a
a run
very
after that.
a very winnable week one game, and you've got it as a loss. I
Yep.
mean, that honestly is fascinating. But I'm actually in agreement with you. I mean, I am not in agreement with you on how good the Jags are going to be. So I think they have a misstep here in Indy week one, and kind of a close game the Colts pull out.
Bucks Vikings. I think this is pretty easy to say given our feelings on the Bucks. The Vikings are winning this game.
This is my lock of the week. I think we
Lock
should
of the
make that a
week.
segment.
I want to make that a thing. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's make it a thing. We each lock in one, and we'll see what our record is on that lock each week. But this is it for me this week.
I like that. Maybe I'll
Vikings.
put up a little graphic for it too. Titans Saints. I'm picking the Saints in this one. I think they're going to win their opener.
Very interesting game. I see it going either way, but I'm gonna take Derrick Henry to have a big game indoors. Titans.
Niners, Steelers. This is my lock of the week. I think the Steelers are going to win this game. I think who
Oh,
knows if Nick Bosa is going to play? What's the situation there? I think there's, Kittle might not play. I'm buying the Steelers. I love the Steelers. They're home here in Pittsburgh. They're winning week one. TJ Watt healthy. He's going to wreck shop.
that is another fascinating pick to go with your lock of the week, which would be considered an upset. I mean, that is really going
Big
out on a limb.
upsets.
Hey, I have the 49ers winning the Super Bowl. I've got them winning week one.
Gotcha. Cardinals, Commanders, I feel like that's pretty easy, even though Commanders have been letdowns in some ways, but I think they're going to beat the Cardinals here.
We agree.
Packers Bears, a fascinating game here in the first 425 matchups. I kind of went either way on what I think this game's going to be. Packers have historically tortured the Bears here, but I'm going to go the Bears in week one. I think this is going to be a fresh, shiny kind of new situation. It'll start off nice. It'll go sour real quick. The Bears are going to win week one.
Interesting. I thought you were going to go Green Bay mainly because of your divisional picks there, but I'm with you. You know, I'm high on Fields. I think it's a big game for him. Bears start with victory.
Raiders Broncos, I think Peyton will show out here in the first game. Everyone will be talking about it, and then they'll come back to earth. I see the Broncos winning this one.
I think they win. I think the game will be close. The Raiders have actually played the Broncos well.
Yeah.
They actually swept them last year. Now, Denver was awful, but the Raiders weren't good either. They seem to play pretty good against Denver. I think the game's close. I think Denver wins.
I said it at the top of the show. I'll say it again. There will be a point in the season that Aiden O'Connell, who showed out in the preseason, will be starting for the Raiders. You have to keep your eye on that. The Dolphins play the Chargers. I think this is a really interesting, high-powered matchup. I'm very fascinated to see how this goes, but I'm buying the Chargers here. I know it's a home opener because they don't really have any home games, but I'm believing in Herbert here in week one to pull this one out.
I'm with you. This is a fascinating matchup. I think there's going to be points scored. I could see the Chargers getting off to a slow start. Miami leads at halftime. Chargers come from behind, win by one.
All right, I like that. Eagles, Patriots. I actually think this could be a sneaky, fascinating game here of the physicality of New England. However, I see Philadelphia pulling this out, winning this game. This game's going to be a lot closer than you think it is. It's not going to be a blowout up in New England, but I see Philly pulling it out.
Yeah, I'll take the overall talent of the Eagles, both sides of the ball. I think they're too much.
Rams, Seahawks. The Seahawks, we just, saw over the Twitter wires, X, whatever you want to call it, about 2 hours ago. Cooper Kupp officially ruled out for this game. The Rams, as I've said, are going to be absolutely awful. The Seahawks are going to win this going away in a blowout.
I figured you would say that. I could almost see this game being close. Rams have had their moments
They've played
against
well against
Seattle,
Seattle, yes.
especially at home. Now, this game's in Seattle. That's a different animal. I am going Seattle to win, but I don't think it'll be a total trouncing.
The Sunday night game, two big primetime games here. The Cowboys and the Giants here on Sunday Night Football. Huge divisional matchup. Could decide a lot for the season here. But I'm going to pick the Cowboys here to open the season. They've tortured the Giants for the most part. The Giants play them a little bit close, but they've struggled outside of the Commanders. They've struggled to beat opponents in their division, and I see the Cowboys winning this one.
Yeah, I feel like the Giants are a very popular pick in this spot, but we're in agreement. I see the Cowboys winning by a touchdown.
And Bry, your Jets, with all the hope, Monday Night Football. Dylan's going to the game. Huge. Probably the biggest Jets game in 10, 15 years. Bills coming to the Jets. You're going to be disappointed because the Bills are going to win this game.
Yeah, we both have our number one seed in the AFC losing the first game on the road. So, like you with the Jags,
there's a method to the
I'm
madness.
I feel like here the Jets, all the hoopla, at least it might be a disappointing season. It might blow up in their face for 1 week, week one, all the
Riding
cameras
high.
on them.
Yeah.
I think this is their moment. I think they win
You know,
this one.
listen, I actually hope it is because you poor Jet fans really need something to cheer about. I feel bad for you guys. But guys, that's going to do it here. We got to wrap this up. We've been here for a while. If you're here till the end of the podcast, whether listening or watching or both, we greatly appreciate it. We're back for season 4. It's 1st and 10. We're here. We got the passion. We got the energy. There's going to be new graphics probably next week. There's going to be all this stuff. I can't wait to get into this, Brian. We're going to, our goal is, as it is every year, to be more consistent, to get our schedules going so we can get together more. There's so much. We love football. We love the NFL. And we greatly appreciate everyone that listens and comments and likes all that stuff. So please do all that stuff. Feel free, if you like the content, to subscribe. Give us your picks, your thoughts on the offseason. We'd love to hear all that. Your division winners, your Super Bowl winners, all of that stuff. Please let us know down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends if you'd be so kind. And until next week of 1st and 10, it's so good to be back. Thanks for watching.